You know, if you're a parent, a caregiver, a teacher, or honestly, maybe someone navigating neurodivergence yourself, you have absolutely felt it. I'm talking about that deep, incredibly heavy frustration when a task is sitting right in front of someone, they know exactly what needs to be done, and yet nothing happens. Well, welcome to our explainer today. We're going to unpack something truly fascinating that actually shifts the blame completely away from the individual and places the focus exactly where it belongs, on the biology of the brain. We are diving deep into the knowing-doing gap in the ADHD brain.
Okay, let's dive into this. They know what to do, so why won't they just do it? I mean, for decades, right, people have just assumed this is some sort of character flaw, laziness, defiance. But as you'll see today, this frustrating gap between knowing and doing, it's entirely a question of biology. It's not about willpower at all.
So here's a quick roadmap for our explainer today. First, we'll cover the knowing-doing gap. Second, brain traits and dopamine. Third, the 4 executive functions. Fourth, we'll look at real-life ADHD struggles. And finally, we'll wrap up with the starting point.
Section 1. The knowing-doing gap. It's not a lack of willpower.
When you see a kid failing to start their homework, or someone constantly losing their keys, or interrupting others in a meeting, it is so easy to assume it's just a lack of effort. Or worse, that it's bad parenting. But we need to take that idea and just toss it right out the window. ADHD is a neurological difference. It primarily involves the front part of the brain called the prefrontal cortex. That child or that adult, they aren't trying to be difficult. Their brain is literally operating exactly the way it's wired to do. Specifically, research actually shows that the activity level in the right side of the prefrontal cortex is often lower compared to neurotypical folks. That specific wiring is exactly what makes holding back impulses or starting a super tedious task feel, well, nearly impossible.
Section 2. Brain traits and dopamine. Processing rewards differently. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is
how it shows the brain's reward system. Inside all of our brains, we have this reward circuit, and it's fueled by a neurotransmitter called dopamine. It's basically the chemical of motivation and pleasure. But watch how the ADHD brain handles this completely differently. For immediate rewards, like playing a video game or getting a quick treat right this exact second, the ADHD brain reacts so quickly and powerfully. Dopamine spikes, hyperfocus kicks right in, and the engagement is just instant and intense. But when we shift gears to delayed rewards, like studying for a test that isn't for another 3 weeks, or doing mundane daily chores for some long-term goal, the dopamine response is just incredibly weak. The brain completely struggles to maintain any level of excitement. It makes the person feel sluggish, totally unmotivated, and physically unable to sustain the effort needed to reach that distant finish line.
Which leads us to a phenomenon I bet a lot of us are very familiar with, the deadline panic. So why does someone with ADHD suddenly power through an entire massive project the night before it's due? Well, it's because that intense late-stage urgency, literally the sheer panic of failing or getting in trouble, finally shocks their system into releasing a massive, sudden rush of dopamine. And bam, that intense rush sparks incredible focus. But as you can imagine, constantly living in that state of sheer panic, it's absolutely exhausting.
Section 3. The 4 executive functions. The brain's control center.
Now, to understand the real root cause of this knowing-doing gap, we have to look at something called executive function. This is the structural mechanism running right there in the prefrontal cortex. Basically, it's the brain's ability to adjust behavior to actually achieve goals. It includes things like planning out a day, keeping your focus, and smoothly shifting gears. You can kind of think of it like the air traffic controller of your mind. So when this system struggles to operate efficiently, everyday tasks that seem totally simple to a neurotypical person suddenly become monumental, exhausting hurdles.
Let's enthusiastically break down these 4 hidden gears that are turning behind every successful daily action we take. First up, working memory. This is holding and processing information temporarily, like keeping a 3-step instruction in your head while you actually do it. Second is inhibition. That's suppressing those sudden impulses, basically stopping yourself from doing or saying something inappropriate. Third is planning. This is creating steps, figuring out what needs to happen first, second, and third. And finally, fourth, flexibility. That's adapting to change and smoothly shifting from one task to a totally different one without having a total meltdown.
Section 4. Real-life ADHD struggles. When the control center struggles, let's move to and see how this builds
into real-world scenarios. Because understanding the science is one thing, but seeing how it actually plays out in real life is where we truly build empathy. These 3 things are the most common battlegrounds for neurodivergent individuals and their parents: homework hurdles, constantly forgotten items, and chronically messy rooms. Let's do a rapid-fire breakdown of these to see exactly which executive functions are misfiring in each situation. First up, homework. It is incredibly common to see a child take 2 entire hours just to finish a single page of repetitive practice, like a kanji drill. Why does this happen? Well, this is a direct breakdown in working memory and planning. The kid looks at the page, and their working memory just gets totally overwhelmed by the sheer volume of it. They literally don't know where to plan the very first step, and any tiny random distraction in the room instantly derails their focus. To them, just stepping up to the starting line feels impossibly heavy.
And then there's the extreme version of the homework hurdle, the summer break panic. The student might actually lie and say, "Yep, it's done," for weeks, purely to avoid the overwhelming anxiety of starting. They'll fake it until the final 2 days of summer. This relates perfectly back to that dopamine rush we discussed earlier. The brain actively avoids the delayed reward of doing just a little bit each day. That leads to this painful cycle of negative experiences, lying straight out of panic, and then finally a frantic, dopamine-fueled rush at the absolute last possible second just to get it done.
Next up on our list of struggles, forgotten items. We're talking lost keys, missing wallets, and those crumpled school printouts buried at the bottom of a backpack for weeks. And this brilliantly illustrates exactly what happens when you have a smaller working memory capacity. The individual sets their keys down, and because that working memory is so easily overwritten by the very next immediate thought, the location of the keys is just instantly deleted from their mind. Poof, gone. This forgetfulness compounds in chaotic moments, like rushing for the train in the morning. Picture this: waking up late, sprinting out the door, and then realizing you forgot absolutely everything you need for the day. This is a direct failure of the planning function. The brain is struggling to clearly visualize the sequence of preparation needed for a morning routine. Instead of a nice, smooth series of steps, everything just feels like a huge, tangled mess.
And what about messy rooms? You might see trash literally piling up on a desk just because the bin isn't directly within arm's reach. This connects heavily to the inhibition and planning pillars. Think about it. The multi-step process required to grab the trash, stand up, walk all the way across the room, throw it away, and then return to the task, it feels so exhausting to that struggling control center that they just give up and leave the wrapper right there.
Now, here's a really important distinction to make regarding inflexibility, that inability to shift gears. ADHD and autism spectrum disorder, or ASD, can actually both look like inflexibility on the outside, but the neurological roots are totally different. In ASD, inflexibility often stems from a deep fear of the unknown, or a real struggle to imagine what comes next. In ADHD, however, inflexibility is almost always about dopamine. They are either hyper-focused on something that's currently giving them dopamine, and they literally can't tear themselves away, or they have a complete utter loss of motivation because the new task offers no dopamine at all.
Section 5. The Starting Point. A new perspective on support.
If you've been feeling guilty as a caregiver for losing your temper, or if you're feeling guilty as someone with ADHD for constantly failing to meet expectations, I want you to just take a deep breath. We are going to alleviate that guilt right now. I want you to burn this specific quote into your memory. They want to do it, but structurally can't. Embracing this truth is the absolute foundation for everything moving forward. It shifts your mindset from demanding more effort, which honestly only causes shame, to providing effective, structured environmental support instead. Because the brain's control center struggles to plan and sustain motivation, the absolute best way to offer practical support is through small steps and tiny victories. This means breaking tasks down into incredibly short, highly focused bursts of work. It means literally putting the trash can right next to the desk. It means designing their everyday environments in a way that practically guarantees a small success experience, building up that lost confidence drop by drop. When you see this knowing-doing gap play out in real life, I really hope this explainer helps you respond not with frustration, but with curiosity and a clear plan for support. So, now that you know they aren't lacking effort, how will you change your approach?